On the 14th of July, Newcastle entered into negotiations for Hugo Ekitike. The plan for the Frenchman was to link up with Alexander Isak in a potentially deadly striking duo. 10 days later, 9 AM on the 24th of July, a plane left Tyneside headed for Asia. Newcastle United were about to embark on the first leg of their pre-season, but Hugo Ekitike was already in Asia, in another team's colours. But most interestingly, and more importantly, Alexander Isak never got on that plane. The date is the 7th of August. The date is currently Friday, the 25th of July. The date is Tuesday, the 15th of July, 2025. And Liverpool have just backed Newcastle into a corner they never wanted to be in. This is how Liverpool attempted to hijack a move for Alexander Isak, a player who was never meant to be sold. And as of right now, he hasn't been. But we'll go through every calculated move Liverpool have done, from the transfer blackmail of Hugo Ekitike to a world record transfer bid that was always meant to be rejected. But firstly, we need to understand the crucial steps of how we got here and the reality we were living in just a few weeks ago. This Liverpool and Newcastle, Isak and Ekitike transfer saga might be one of the most interesting and consequential transfer sagas in modern football history. A club at the very top of English football vying to keep their spot there, create an era of dominance that they once tried in years beforehand and now see an opening to dominate for years after. And another club that has been backed by money like no other, yet doesn't have the talents to show for it. But when a potentially world-class striker comes onto the market, it looks like it could be their first opportunity to truly stamp their claim as potential title contenders in years to come. What happens if Newcastle sign Ekitike and keep Isak? Or what happens if Liverpool's precisely timed chess moves actually work in their favour? And finally, potentially the most devastating outcome of all, what happens if Newcastle end up with neither? The date is currently Friday, the 25th of July, and yesterday might have been the most pivotal day in the transfer window. There is a genuine possibility that Alexander Isak signs for Liverpool Football Club. In a situation where it felt like Newcastle had the power and they were using it, it felt like Liverpool could have orchestrated it all along, walking them into a deal with Ekitike, agreeing personal terms, so that when Liverpool approached the negotiating table, suddenly they had all the power, stealing Hugo Ekitike away from Newcastle, and we're still here on the brink of potentially signing one of the best strikers in the world, maybe? Now, at first glance, in this situation, it looks like Liverpool have played a blinder. In just under 24 hours, when it looked like Liverpool's striker transfer options were diminishing, it now looks like they will get either Ekitike or Isak. Isak may be the most desired striker on the market, but the problem is, he isn't on the market. And so clubs stayed put, stuck with the talents they already had, or filled the number 9 hole elsewhere. Every major club that would be vying for Alexander Isak's signature already has a striker. Arsenal, as we speak, are just confirming the Victor Gyökeres signing. Man City have already spent a lot of money this season bolstering their midfield. Their attacking options look sorted already. Real Madrid feel like they can't sign anyone unless they tap them up first and get them on a free contract. That's not happening anytime soon, and they already have a wealth of attacking options. Every big club around Europe turned their back on this deal. There was one club that didn't, one club that felt like there had been an opportunity, and that's Liverpool. A deal wasn't just believed to be impossible, but also didn't make any sense. However, at the time of recording, Newcastle still have a lot of power, and I think it's being widely underestimated. And alongside that, they own Alexander Isak. He is a Newcastle player for at least 2 or 3 more years, so they have all of the ability to block any interest or advancement from any club, and that includes Liverpool. The date is the 7th of August, and Isak still doesn't play for Liverpool. But to be honest, that doesn't have much to do with Liverpool. Over the past couple of weeks, Isak has refused to go on the pre-season tour. He's been training abroad at his old club. He separated himself from the group and made it very clear his intentions fans. He wants to sign for Liverpool, but there isn't much anyone can do when Newcastle don't have a replacement. Now, obviously, their ideal is to not let Isak go, but the amount of pressure that he's now put on the Newcastle board, it now seems the priority for Newcastle to look for a suitable number 9 striker, and this summer hasn't gone to plan. There was one club. The question is, who had got into his ear? What changed in those 2 weeks? What happened in those 2 weeks? What happened for Alexander Isak to not get on that plane to the pre-season? Something happened in those 2 weeks, and I think it has everything to do with Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards. Newcastle right now can't find a replacement, and therefore Liverpool can't sign Newcastle's number 9. And it's incredible to see the contrast between the higher ups at both clubs, the people working behind the scenes on these transfers. Newcastle fans are getting increasingly frustrated with the lack of competency, the lack of urgency and strategy. But in contrast, the people working on Liverpool's transfer strategy, the speed of the deals, the magnitude of the deals, it's been a shambles behind the scenes at Newcastle. What looked like a massive transfer window, and they've failed as of now. Not being able to bring in the correct names, not having a plan, seemingly getting rejected by multiple players so publicly. Liverpool have meticulously played their chess moves throughout this summer to create a squad that's going to compete for years to come. It's transfer negotiations done at a world-class level, buying world-class players, and there seems like there's two men responsible: Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes. See, while Newcastle were dreaming of a future, Liverpool were planning a heist, timing their moves to perfection, leveraging power, money, timing to attempt to pull off one of the boldest transfer robberies in years. I mean, just for example, bidding that English football record of 120 million only for it to be rejected instantaneously, and then Liverpool posturing like they're going to move away from the deal. That's perfect. Liverpool aren't walking away from the deal. They're showing their intentions, that they have the money. They're showing the player that they're willing to spend it, and then they're putting the pressure on Newcastle, saying, you come to the negotiation table when you're ready to sell a player that wants to leave. Step 1 was securing plan B before plan A. Step 2 was unnerving the player to create a crack in the door. And step 3 is gaining power at the negotiation table. And that's exactly what this move does. When Newcastle approached Liverpool, the dynamic of the negotiations changed. Liverpool have some power in those talks. They can state the numbers that they're willing to pay, and in some ways Newcastle have to abide by it, because in order to pull off this type of deal you need to leverage the power, and that's exactly what Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes have done. And then you think of the consequences of this deal. Before even the Ekitike signing, most people were saying, due to the amount of money Liverpool have spent, they're the front runners to winning the league again. The pressure that brings on the club, the eyes on Liverpool next season, the expectation for them to dog walk the Premier League is going to be like nothing we've seen in a very long time. Liverpool are going to have to change how they view themselves. Liverpool fans are going to have to change the perception they have of their own club. This underdog mentality that feels like it fits the people of Liverpool, the city of Liverpool, that's going to have to change. You've gone from sleeping giants in the late 90s and 2000s with sprinkles of success to an embarrassment of a club that once was in the early 2010s. Jurgen Klopp arrives and rebuilds this club to the glory days it once dreamt about. But with Jurgen Klopp and the journey he had on Merseyside, stayed this feeling of still being an underdog, being at the top of English football, but yet having football against you, having to fight and scrap for every point and every win because we weren't like other clubs. But now I think that perception has to change. The money that you've spent to get here might have come from brilliant running of a football club, keeping within their financial limitations and building season upon season to where we can get to a summer to spend like this. But money is money, and it will be viewed the same way by rival fans and pundits and journalists up and down the country. You spend money, you gain expectation and lose your underdog status, because now you have to win. It's not like you could win, You have to win. It's a pressure that fits the status of the club. It's a pressure that fits the magnitude. But to live it truly, how we're about to live it this upcoming season, it's going to be interesting and it's going to be unavoidable. And it will either end in unimaginable glory or complete and utter embarrassment. One of the outcomes that we've spoken about today is going to happen, no matter what. So I guess the only thing I have left to say is strap in. It's going to be a wild journey, and we're almost certainly going to witness a meltdown.